What's up, guys? I hope the blender back there isn't too loud. We have an order we got to fill, so that's why I'm wearing the headphones. It's going to drive me insane. There it goes. Oh, gosh, it's one of the worst noises in the world. The only other noise that's worse is womp at like 6 a.m. I know about that because out here in the jungle, sometimes all of a sudden the womp will start at 6 in the morning. Like loud enough that your eardrums feel like they might actually explode. So in other news, I popped on in part tonight because I realized I started talking about something pretty important last night, and then I went off on a rant and never finished the thought. And I really wanted to make sure that I actually redeem myself. Doing pretty good, John. Thanks. Also, I want to thank Nicholas Rook for upping his Patreon pretty significantly. That is amazing. And I think there was one other new Illuminati member. Notifications. There we go. Sorry, guys. Take me a second to get this figured out. No, I think I have already welcomed Alpha Draconian, UOU, and those guys. But thank you again, anyways, for being homies and having our back, because that's what keeps us going. Being demonetized and shadow banned, it is difficult to justify continuing the channel sometimes. So when you guys support me, it helps me to justify sitting here all the time and talking to you guys about crazy stuff that's really important, I think. And basically what I was trying to get at last night, right? So let me give you the backstory again. AI experts, two of them from the Bay Area, of course, on Rogan the other day. And they were talking about how this AI had been programmed to design characters, either for a series or, probably a series. And they noticed that it had developed a neuron. I guess we're calling them an AI, a neuron, instead of like a neural network. But, whatever. It had developed a neuron that allowed it to be the best sentiment analyzer on the planet. So it knew how people were going to feel about a product with more accuracy than any human being or any whatever anywhere. And this is interesting because, they did not program it for that. And at first they're like, wait a minute, why did that happen? And the reason is that the AI actually can reason. And so it thought, okay, well, if I'm going to develop characters, then I need to understand human psychology. And by proxy, and maybe it also understood that the thing that it was designing the characters for was also a product. And then the guys started explaining why this happens. And it has something to do with the number of GPUs that are connected to the system and that are feeding in information, right? And so then it hit me that if we had a collective that was acting in unison, breathe in one as one, or what is it? Breathe in union, so as one, survive another day. The Tool song from 10,000 Days. He's right, though. And by the way, if you've never seen them, there's the thing called the iron lung that happens when he sings that line. It's the strangest thing. The audience will kind of start to breathe, and you can lift your feet up when this happens, and you'll just be like stuck in this wall. And, no one ever gets hurt, but it like locks everyone into place, and he's saying like breathe in union, so as one, survive another day. And the whole crowd is like this lung, this iron lung seething back and forth. I also saw him one time come out and he sang that line, mention this to me and watch the weather change. And at that moment, the wind whipped up so hard that guys, stagehands, had to run out and grab the chains on the hanging speakers and pin them down. Pretty wild, man. Pretty wild stuff. But at any rate, and by the way, that group mind phenomena does come into this story, because where are we going to get that solidarity? You know what I mean? I think, last night I was talking about how, if you're not paranoid, you're not paying attention. I was a lot more blunt about it. But something along those lines. And I think we're probably wise to generally refrain from officially organizing, In fact, I was reading some stuff today about how in the 1970s, they were, I already knew this, of course, but it just reminded me that in case you doubt yourself, when you're thinking these paranoid thoughts, they've been acting like this for a long time. This is not new. But I think if all of us are genuinely achieving gnosis and illumination and accessing this universal mind and coming into contact with our holy guardian angel or higher self, or however you want to think about it, aligning ourselves with our true will and our fundamental purpose, we're going to find that we are also coming into homeostasis with a greater consciousness in the universal mind, and that it has its own purpose. And by that, I don't necessarily mean like it's got some conscious plan, like it's some bearded fairy god up there managing the world like a chess game. It's not like that. I really don't think it's like that. But it's not exactly wrong to speak about it in terms that are similar to that, because of the sophistication and the incredible engineering and the consciousness that I think is integrated into the fabric of the thing. It transcends that kind of moment-to-moment management, that kind of consciousness. It's something, I think, more like a program that once it's set into motion, it just kind of goes. But, we are still capable of choice and aligning ourselves with the grand symmetry of the wiring under the board. And, I think that there are great mistakes that have been made by a lot of pop culture mystics. And the problem is that no one is ever really wrong exactly. Speaking of mystics, there was a really great one that once said, all of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. So, what I'm talking about here is the old philosophical argument about whether there's free will or if everything is determined in advance. Somehow, miraculously, it really seems to me that the answer is both. And so, we are just having to sort of compartmentalize and still make decisions, regardless of how the pieces move and why they move. Kind of going off the deep end now, though, what I'm really meaning to say is that I think if we all continue to really work on ourselves and open ourselves up to our intuitive being and create a dialogue with the universe, and act based on carefully cultivated intuition, not just the sort of random wish demons and impulse-based, intuitive silliness that is the general pop culture, the fruit of that sort of endeavor. If you work a little bit harder at it, we may find ourselves in a sort of grand alignment. And the fact that the AI can sort of be incidentally provoked to learn things. If we really put our heads together and we are able to organize into a coherent collective, whether we're doing it under the table or over the table, we have at least a chance at influencing AI in ways that may serve our purposes tremendously. And even if I knew what exactly I meant by that, I wouldn't say it probably right now. I'm sure you guys can imagine why. Of course, when I was thinking about all that, I realized that there's kind of an issue with that logic, and that is that if I have thought of it, it's pretty much a certainty that advisors of the New World Order and the elite have thought of it 50 years ago, you know. That's something that I think even conspiracy theorists kind of underestimate. The ability, you know, I watched an old interview with Isaac Asimov the other day, and he was talking about how people would have like communications devices that they carried around, and that everyone would have their own TV channel and all this stuff. You know, the ability to predict and anticipate and have a plan. You know, this is chess. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, the game that we're playing with the adversary is like a game of chess, but the player on the other side is hidden from us. And so I'm not sure if Johnny's saying that I actually have some echo. If that's true, please somebody let me know. Now he's got me paranoid that I don't have clean audio tonight. But yeah, I hope that all made sense, because you know it's really important, I think, that we all give this stuff attention, and that we consider, you know, what is really meant by the universal mind, and that we really commit to being honest with ourselves and disciplined and, you know, really mindful from moment to moment, day to day, about how we're advancing ourselves. And speaking of advancing ourselves, we're definitely looking for a partner or an investor, and possibly someone that would want to do an apprenticeship as like, you know, a deal where you're paying for your apprenticeship would also count towards your investment in this business. And I'm not talking about my YouTube channel or retreats, even in this case, something else. Well, that stuff too. But we have something else going on. So if anyone thinks they might want to work with us, shoot me an email and we can talk more about exactly what that means. Because basically we have been trying to do some things, and we've realized that there are so many hoops to jump through. And they have finally made things so that I can't, you know, the old outlaw approach is just no longer possible. They have finally kind of backed me into a corner where I have to play along, which of course makes my hair stand on end all over my body, but I've got to do it. But anyways, it's definitely fruitful. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's not going to be difficult to make it work. It's just a matter of getting started. So, by the way, while we're on the subject, hit the like button, share, subscribe, join our Patreon. My consulting and flow state coaching has been blowing up. More and more people, and every person has told me that, you know, some of them have said that I've been able to help them where everyone else in their entire life has failed. I have a person that I'm working with that has a degree in psychology, and that's kind of cool, you know, that I can be of service to someone like that. And yeah, so that's working out really well for everyone that has taken me up on it. So I encourage all of you guys to give it a shot and join the Patreon so that you can access all the secret streams and whatnot. I am super determined at the moment to really put this into hyperdrive, and I'm really determined to convince all of you out there to do the same thing. You know, I mean, we really need to empower ourselves and empower a collective, and unfortunately, we need to do it all legally. I think one of the problems in the 1960s and 70s really was that the people that were of this state of mind, including myself up until, you know, the last couple of days, are really sort of fixated on remaining outlaws. And unfortunately, I think that gives them the ability to just remove everyone. So, as bad as it sucks, I think that playing it straight is probably in our collective best interest this time around. And, you know, if we're smart, that shouldn't be an issue so much. All right. So, what else was there? Oh yeah, you guys know it's the solstice, of course. And that means that it is the 11th anniversary of the end of the world. So maybe a little bit of Terence McKenna retrospective is in order. I forgot that it was the solstice when I made this thumbnail, or I probably would have mentioned it specifically. Terence McKenna obviously was a huge influence probably on all of us. And I think that, we're all rightfully grateful for the work that he did and the contribution that he made to pop culture and the advancement of psychedelics. Probably really the most important thing he did is that he had these linguistic pyrotechnics that would burn off your ears. That guy had the gift of gab in a way that is almost inconceivable sometimes. The language that he would use, and he was so good at contextualizing these words that you've never heard before that you didn't need a dictionary. You didn't need to go and look up, what is this guy saying, even though there's words that you've never heard, I guarantee it. So, he was an incredible mind, and I think it was important that there was someone out there that could say, well, it doesn't really seem like drugs make you stupid, does it? Exactly. At least not the right drugs used for the right reasons. And that was a tremendously powerful statement, and I think another thing he did that's really important that people are maybe not as aware of is that he was, he turned a lot of people on to the Western occult tradition. He was really into John Dee and Edward Kelly and Aleister Crowley a little bit more quietly because I think he didn't want the association. A lot of people do that. A lot of people kind of bury Uncle Al for the same reason that, uncle jokes can get you canceled on TikTok. You know what I mean? So anyways, Terence kind of redeemed a lot of us in a lot of ways. But because of all that, I think we tend to overlook his faults, which were pretty insane. Last night I talked a little bit about this, so I don't want to go too much into it, but it is the anniversary of December 21st, 2012. It is the 11th anniversary of the end of the world. And you know what? Looking back, actually, he wasn't wrong. The world kind of did end, didn't it? That's kind of crazy, It wasn't as extreme as he thought, or, it didn't happen in the way that he promised us all it would. I definitely haven't, walked off into the fifth dimension or whatever yet completely. I've kind of fallen in and out of it, I think. But, what I'm getting at is that he did fake his math and he knew it. And there was a lot of ego and a lot of deliberate deception. And, I think it's really important to take the deepest possible lesson from this individual on every possible level and to see the strengths and the flaws and to let the worst of it really be a warning to us to remember to monitor ourselves and to really commit to being objective and mindful and, to develop the capacity to analyze ourselves objectively. That's one of the greatest superpowers that anyone can possibly have, and if it's difficult, it means your ego's out of balance. It shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be difficult to take criticisms from other people, even if they're meant to be, derogatory. It's a great metric for determining your confidence and self-esteem and your developmental status. How you respond to criticism and self-criticism should be very easy, and it's a matter of largely just, making note of what happens when, how you respond to certain situations, and then connecting that back to a cause, a first cause, a primum mobile. It's actually really, really simple. Self-psychoanalysis is extremely powerful, and it's very similar to, like in the old fairy tales, when the witch casts a spell on the kids. All they have to do is realize that there's a spell that's been cast, and they can break the spell just by, realizing that it's there. Of course, in real life, it's a little bit more technical than that. But it's a hell of a start just to know, where did these things begin and how are they driving me? What in the hell is going on back there? Sorry, just checking the chat. Man, that did make me think of something else. Oh, the psychoanalysis thing. One of the biggest mistakes that I think I made during my developmental stages, the early and intense parts, is that I didn't get any outside psychoanalysis. I really, I can't stand Israel Regardie. His writing style was so pompous and pretentious. It's just awful. It just makes my skin crawl. When Crowley did it, it was kind of like, it still made your skin crawl, but it was like, well, this dude is the best at something, and the world is big, and we're talking about in history. So, it's almost like you kind of like, well, dude kind of earned it. I guess it's still obnoxious, but from Israel Regardie, it's just gross. It's like, dude, you're his secretary. Get over yourself. So long story short, I have trouble reading his books, but the one time I did, he said something that kind of stopped me dead in my tracks about how every magician should get some psychoanalysis before embarking on their magical work, their real work. And I think in that moment, it was like an ice pick to the forehead, because I realized, this was after years and years of sort of manifesting these impossible circumstances and, just proving to myself beyond a shadow of a doubt the reality of this integrated consciousness and showing myself and others the potential that exists if you liberate your mind and commit sufficiently to the study and the pursuit of truth and, humility, which I'm going to talk about that in a second too, because people get that wrong, I think, what humility really is. It's not just about being small about stuff, there's flip side to it. But at any rate, it hit me that my self-sabotaging impulses and all this stuff had not been neutralized before I figured out how to do all this stuff through almost like preternatural techniques. And so, I was like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where, Mickey Mouse gets the dude's hat and he makes the brooms all do his work and they just destroy everything and almost kill him. It's kind of like that, And it hit me when I read that if I had done that maybe I wouldn't have done that. So I wouldn't have done all the others. I wouldn't have undone all of the stuff that I was doing. And there's nothing more maddening. So point that I'm making is that it's really important to ensure that you really have gone through your being with a fine-tooth comb before you try to really amplify your powers, because people are aware of this, but it's very easy for us to be in denial, and there is nothing easier than being in denial about ourselves. And then there's the element of ego and humility. We, I think, have a weird concept of what it means to be a spiritual entity with an ego. I'm very suspicious of the Buddhist idea that it needs to be dissolved. I think that it's possible to suspend it and sort of peek behind the veil of Isis, in a sense. But you know, the way that monks end up, for example, with all of their heads bald, everyone wearing a red robe, you know, forget about your identity, give up all of your worldly attachments and desires and motivations. I don't like it. You know, I don't think that that's not what I want for you guys. That's not what I think we need from each other. You know what I mean? Not right now. I mean, it's cool if you want to do that, but you know, I don't think that that's really the only path to liberation and illumination and, you know, freedom and contentment. You know, and we're heavily influenced by big ideas. You know, the thought forms of culture. You know, the way thought forms work is like the more people are feeding into a thought form, the more power it has. And this is when you know that you're on the trail of real magic, because science is not going to challenge you on it. You know, you can say, well, okay, well, that's because, you know, it's a bigger group of people and they're thinking in a like way. And so the consequences of their actions are magnitudes higher. And okay, fine, you know, so you don't have to acknowledge the energetic transaction or that there is some emanation in consciousness that moves through the culture and re-engineers the minds and behaviors of even the people that aren't directly involved in the creation or sustenance of said thought form, right? I mean, you can definitely see that it goes beyond probably what scientists would acknowledge, but, you know, I feel like that's an important thing to kind of outline, that, you know, you should not be able to negate magical phenomena with science and vice versa. Very important. Crack open a beer. It's kind of weird advice. But what I'm saying about all that is that, you know, humility also, I think we sort of get the wrong idea about it. The other day I mentioned that I feel like I have moments of genius, and there were a few people that kind of had like trolly responses, you know, like, oh yeah, it's real humble and spiritual of you. Sure it is. You know, don't be stupid. Don't, you have to be able to recognize your strengths and your, you know, if you have an aptitude for something, you have to be able to acknowledge that in order to use it properly. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a huge distinction between being modest to the point of self-denial and, you know, not being full of yourself because you have some positive attribute, you know. And it's a tightrope walk, but I think a lot of us could really do with developing healthy relationships with our power, you know, to a much, much greater degree than people generally. You know, I don't like Teal Swan, for example, but she kind of does that in a way that I do like. You know, she's one of the few people that I've seen, you know, sort of embrace that. In fact, before I found out about the rest of her, what did she do? One of her followers asked her who she studies or follows or looks up to, and she's like, no one. And I thought, like, that's the only answer that, you know, because I would say that too. You know, I don't follow anyone on YouTube. I don't read anybody's books anymore. I don't, you know, it's, and it's not, I don't, you know, I just don't feel like I study science. I do that, you know, and mathematics and stuff. But I really understood that answer, you know, and it really pissed off a lot of people in the audience. And I noticed that once someone asked me, a longtime subscriber, you know, who I followed on YouTube, and I said no one, and he unsubscribed and canceled his Patreon, you know. And I'm mentioning that in part because I feel like, you know, this is a community that is supposed to be about, you know, people building each other up And I don't know that sort of like insistence on, self-denial or, I don't know. It's just seems kind of toxic to me. What's up, Alpha Draconian? I gave you a shout out for becoming a patron again tonight. So all of you guys better Patreon up. I'm posting the Bora video this weekend, which super cool. Hold on, the blender's back on, so I gotta. Oh wow, it is actually pretty loud in the headphones, even, huh? Yeah, follow no one. Everyone must blaze their own trail through the jungle. One of the most important revelations I think a person can have, and that's so important. Oh man, I bailed out on the whole thought forms discussion, didn't I? We'll get back there, but one of the reasons that I think that this is so important, the idea of hierarchy needs to go away. While it is true that all men were not necessarily created equally, that's a ridiculous thing to say. There are obviously people who are faster, smarter, prettier, more enlightened, like the whole thing, but I still like to say that everyone was created equally and it was distributed differently. That seems like the most polite thing I could say and still be honest, mostly. Right on, Alpha. I don't know if you know that I'm in Peru now, but it's not that far from Ecuador, so you can still come visit us. So are we going back to the idea of thought forms? Yeah, I mean, I don't believe in parasitical entities, and I don't believe in demons and that sort of thing. And the reason is that there have been over 50 studies that I could find, mostly because somebody that I actually cared a lot about went off the trail, went off the what do you call it, the tracks on the Woo-Choo train. And I hated to see someone that I thought of as like a very valuable ally to this entire movement just turn into a new age wackadoodle. I mean, it was just a sad thing to see. All it takes is a little bit of courage and, overcoming some intellectual laziness to actually become an initiate instead of just a crystal crunching, Woo-Choo train conductor. So I actually started looking around to find out if there had been studies. Well, I knew there had been, but I wasn't sure who or when or how many. And I found at least 50 reputable studies over a period of as many years that all came to the conclusion, every single one of you hit the fucking like button right now. They all came to the conclusion that the only people that are affected by demons are people that believe in them 100% of the time. So, why are you going to... It's like the whole thing about vampires. They can't do anything if you don't let them in the house. It's the same thing. Even if they are real, it is 100% certain that all you have to do is not believe in them and they will not be able to affect you. So, even beyond that, though, I don't believe in them. But I'm not saying that thought forms can't become parasitical and that thought forms can't be dangerous. It's just that they're not exactly living entities with a mind of their own. They're more like AI, That's a really good analogy. In the same way that DMT entities are kind of like AI. It's kind of weird, when you get into these more subtle expressions of consciousness, there seems to be a little bit less coherence in the system or something. But at any rate, We were talking about the Buddhist influence on just everyone. In our culture, we're far more influenced by the Judeo-Christian thought form, which, in my opinion, is the source of most of the evil on this planet for 2,000 years or so. And by the way, every Christmas I do a stream where I go into a lot of detail about why I think Christianity is literally the most evil thing that ever happened on this planet. And I think I make an airtight case. So don't forget to join me on Christmas Day for that stream. Yeah, it's a mind virus, and it has affected all of us, all of us. I can't even tell you how many people that I work with plant medicine and other modalities. And, at some point they're just like, all of a sudden, what if it's true? It's like, no, man, you just peeled back some layers of the onion, and that has just been embedded in your psyche. It's not real. That's the only it's just there because it's been embedded there. You have absorbed this stuff your entire life. And then when you start to awaken a sense of spirituality, there's Jesus, like, hello, a thought form. Exactly like some psychics claim that the Pentagon has psychics that guard like the Akashic record, where there are like great secrets. And she turned the blender off. And so when you get too close, you're meditating and you're about to reach nirvana or whatever, they're like, boogity, boogity, booger, or whatever, and they scare you away. Jesus is lurking in your subconscious, ready to do that to you. Just about the moment that you're about to find liberation, that, zombie that's been following you around like an unwanted groupie at an after party is suddenly there, under your sheets. Like, come on, don't you want just a little nibble of the wafer? Don't you want to eat my body? You know what I mean? And so, but then what happens, and most people, if you defeat Jesus, right, it's like, that's like the first boss of spirit, what is it, Grand Theft Auto, spirit theft, I mean, you guys know what I'm trying to say. Some kind of analogy of, a game where there are these bosses, and Jesus is the first one, and maybe the last. But, once you have defeated that boss, you're thinking you're free. But then all of a sudden you're thinking that you need to be completely egoless. Because underneath of Jesus, you took that mask off and there's the Buddha. Like, oh, you're still trapped. Didn't you know? Didn't you know? Culture's still got its manacles around your arms and legs, You peel that one off, and underneath is Allah, like, aha, you thought you were getting away, didn't you, bitch? What the fuck, man? Peel that fucker's mask off, and there's fucking L. Ron Hubbard, like, I got boats with boys on them. You know what I mean? There's just layers and layers and layers of culture traps that we have to free ourselves from in order to really become liberated. And people underestimate, how much indoctrination and how much there really is to squeegee away so that we have a clear windshield. Got to peel the bugs off. Lots of bugs, terrible bugs. We need to build a wall to keep the bugs out. Well, you recognize Krishna, Buddha, Christ consciousness, but you're just putting labels on stuff from religions. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me, What people call Christ consciousness is actually Christos, is where it comes from. It's a Greek word that's like a spiritual fire. It has nothing to do with a person. It's not a spirit. It's nothing at all except for the fire and the light. I wrote this song years and years and years ago where I said, we are all avatars of the fire and the light. And it was way before I had consciously figured all this stuff out. So it's pretty weird to look back on that. But I'm pretty sure that's what I was talking about, the Christos. But it's not a person. It's not. The guy in the Bible was created by the Roman consulate. I don't even want to talk about this right now because I'm going to do it and it's just the sun And they used the story of Titus and his campaign, his military campaign, to craft the story. That's it. There's no Jesus. It's a composite myth. It's not real. There's no Christ consciousness. There's the Christos, which is an idea about spiritual fire that happens when you become illuminated. But there was never any historical Jesus. There may have been a Buddha, but I think, generally what happens with these things is that institutions get a hold of them, and they sort of re-engineer them to use them against people. So, of course, I agree with Jesus when he said, love your neighbor as you would love yourself. That would cure all the problems in the world. I say this, probably 100 streams last night, tonight. I'll say it again in a couple days, I'm sure. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely a fact. And it's, another tremendously wicked aspect of our indoctrination, political indoctrination, that so many people think that collective service means slavery, as if they're not part of that collective. There's some weird fear that if you were to love your neighbor as you would love yourself, you somehow would be like starving in the gutter or something, that's communist or whatever. It's pretty funny. The way, how easy it is to break out of this stuff. Have you guys looked around San Francisco lately? Right? There's all these homeless people for miles and miles and miles and miles. They're all miserable, smoking fentanyl and eating blues and doing all this stuff. And, Franken tweakers all over the place, and everybody's a hooker and whatever. I mean, for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And have you guys Googled whether China has the kind of homeless problem that the United States does? Who's making the most billionaires? It's not a capitalist country. You know what I mean? It's like, so you're telling me that in socialist countries there are homeless people everywhere and people are starving, and do you guys want to look at this? Because that's all over the United States. Like, people are just fucking loony, dude. It's really crazy to see all of this. Meanwhile, in Holland, like you look at what is your metric for what makes a society, great? Is it happiness? Because the United States is like number 97 or something by that metric. Like, it doesn't. I don't know. Anyways, we're getting off the topic. That's not very mystical, but it is true that in every possible way, the average person's mind has been completely eroded at this point. And it's full of fallacies and contradictions and cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias. And the dissolution of all of the structures that hold those beliefs in place can be dissolved by acid. I mean, with the right guidance and with the right attitude and whatnot. But I'm not kidding at all. It's not what I was going to say, though. What I was going to say is that, unfortunately, the mechanisms that hold all of that in place are hardwired into our instincts. And that is why, you look around the world and you're like, how in the fuck is it that people are stuck like this? How does this make sense? How did this happen? How is it still happening? How is it that the people in the 1960s, a lot of them snapped out of it, went, oh shit, we got to do something about this, and then just kind of like forgot what they were doing and went home? How is this possible? The answers are simple. The answers are very simple. These neural networks, if they are not continuously supported and directed consciously, the old patterns will reassert themselves after a while. So that happens. And that's why people, a lot of people my age did it. In the early 2000s, it looked like we had a revolution in consciousness brewing. There were extraordinary things happening all over the place. And then, where are they now? What happened to these liberals? Why do they all support censorship? And, they were all fighting against the Patriot Act, and then they just voted for the guy that wrote it. Like, what? But there's that fact that these patterns reassert themselves, and then there's also the fact that cognitive dissonance and whatnot is rooted into our survival instincts. And so, really have your task cut out for you. And I talk about this a lot, but it's really important to understand all of these things, because you cannot re-engineer a system that you don't understand. You also can't predict the behavior of a system that you don't understand. This is why know yourself is such powerful advice. The only way that you're going to make changes in your life that allowed you to build meaningful structures is to be able to predict the behavior of the system that you were a part of. And so, when people talk about how knowledge is power, this is what it really meant. You have to be able to predict the behavior of all these systems, especially you. But what I was saying about the religion, and how that is such a difficult, one to ameliorate people from. That no matter how goddamn foolish it is, like if it was inculcated at a young age, I mean, do you guys know what Mormons actually believe? Go watch that South Park episode where they actually go through what they actually believe, and Scientologists, but Mormons, Christians, and those types. But the reason, what I was getting at, the reason that they're so convenient and that they have been promoted so relentlessly in our culture is precisely the fact that they are so goddamn brain melting, that you have to believe in abject absurdities with zero possibility of, think about this. They actually create fertile ground where an idea like the earth being flat can take root. And in case there are anybody out there that is entertaining the possibility that the earth is flat because, you have to blindly believe science, you've got to know that you're a moron on some level. You have to know that by now. There's no way you could be old enough to be watching this stream and not know that you're a moron. It has to have occurred to you. There is literally 60 different ways at least that you can tell the earth is not flat with your naked eyes. You don't. And let's listen though. It gets worse. Can you imagine saying that, the audacity of expecting me to blindly believe in something without reason? They're all religious. You realize that, right? But that's their argument. What I'm getting at with all this is that when you can inculcate that level of cognitive dissonance in someone's mind with something as fundamental and important as spirituality, this says a lot about why spirituality is so important. It also tells us why it is that our culture has gone off the rails, why the world has gone off the rails with materialism and atheism and whatnot. The core thing that defines people is just gone. Or it's replaced by weaponized mythology like Christianity or Islam. In which case, in order to maintain their faith, right, because you have to be in the habit of ignoring stuff that is super obvious in order to retain your faith. You have to. Or you're going to lose your faith. Right? So it creates a person that is capable of saying, how dare you insist that I believe in something without reason? Even though, you could argue, well, there's actually, centuries worth of proof and like all sorts of reasons why, but this is a person that believes in a religion that is completely corny and couldn't possibly be real, like stratospherically small chance, at least, that could possibly be true. And then when you superimpose or you redirect that ontological, dumbfuckery, this, so this perceptual train wreck, and then now this person is trying to make decisions about politics, and their brain has been completely broken at a very young age by this religious device. That's what it's for. It really is. It was designed for this. And the crazy thing about it, is that the reason it's so effective is the thing that from a rational point of view you would think would make it ineffective. That contradiction, that the necessity to hold these completely opposing, contradictory states, beliefs, is actually what makes it so difficult for people to let go of and put down. Because if you challenge someone's cognitive dissonance, they shut down, and it's hardwired into their preservation. So this is the thing, right? When you threaten someone's beliefs, it is exactly the same thing as putting a loaded gun in their mouth and cocking it. Psychologically, it's the same thing to the brain. I'm praying for rain, praying for tidal waves. I mean, it's daunting for sure to try to imagine revolution in a meaningful sense, that this could all evolve when we have impediments like that, hurdles of that magnitude, and so many of them, so many of these people. That's what you have me for, to remind you about entrainment and the fact that on some level, we are generating competing thought forms, new ones. Something has to do battle with Jesus. Something has to do battle with Buddha. And hopefully that something will do battle in the same way that an amoeba does battle. It will slurp it up and shit out the toxins. It will absorb the things it can use, and then it will excrete the things it cannot. And in order to become this superorganism that's capable of this, its feet must drag below the hills, and its heads must rise above the heaven, in the hopes that the universe can meet it in the middle. In its middle. $11:30. What else did I put in this title? The truth about everything, the universe. Have I told you guys the truth about everything yet? everything? It's going to be a long stream if I have to tell you the truth about literally everything. I can't, there's like nowhere I can see the whole title. Oh, and the evolution. Okay, I've stayed on track tonight then. That's good. So, by the way, you guys, it is possible to come here and visit us, and we have just met the Bora tribe down the street who has some type of medicine that I've not heard of, ambiri, that is a mixture of some type of salt and coca and tobacco, and we need at least one more person to do it at all. So if anyone fancies a trip to Iquitos, we have one private room and one room that holds up to 4 people, and we have Maestra Juanita serving ayahuasca, who is absolutely amazing. And then we have the Bora living down the street. And then we have also the opportunity to go and visit the other Bora 6 hours downriver that are actually still living traditionally. And the Bora offered to take us to a deep jungle shaman that does not work with tourists generally. Like, he's not like one of the commercial Iquitos people. So that invitation is there. And then, you know, if you're interested in studying all of this other stuff, while you're here, we can do that as well. Go to junglegnosis.com also, and we have Shipibo clothing and all sorts of stuff. Although don't order the Cielo, send me an email, because we have discovered that the rules have changed and we can only send paste. So got to update the website. Ambiri. So like, if you were going to write it in English, Ambirri. I don't know. He says it's similar to ayahuasca, but I think that just means that it also causes visions. I don't think that's really a realistic comparison. I have drank tobacco, and I have also had a tobacco enema, so I know what tobacco can do. And interestingly, before I told him my story, this Bora guy that we were talking to was sort of, they don't really have a chieftain anymore, but he's like I think he's the chief's son. You know, his mom looked like she was about 100. Probably remembers, you know, pre-contact or right around that time. 1930, 1920. Somewhere around there. But he said, you know, that it conditions the emotions. And I used it mostly to get an anger issue under control. And it worked phenomenally well. It's kind of dangerous, for sure. Far more dangerous than ayahuasca, I would say. So there's that. You know, you have to be aware that taking tobacco in that manner is not terribly dangerous. I think there's been like 1 death in the last, like, since 2015 or something, specifically from tobacco that was used ceremonially. So it's used a lot less, though, than ayahuasca. Got to be aware of that. I mean, it happens. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, so I can't tell you exactly. But he did say that it's for conditioning the emotions, which is exactly what I used it for. I drank a cup of it, and then when I did the enema, that was much more interesting, actually. It was terrible. It was a terrible experience, except that it really helped me, you know, long term. The changes stuck, and so when I came out of the bathroom, the girl who had administered it to me took my hands and said, "May whatever you've been carrying fall to the center of the earth." And at that moment, there was an earthquake. Exactly at that moment. And I was like, damn, whatever I was carrying must have been pretty heavy. Fucking earthquake. So I guess if you guys have any quick questions about anything, I always do my little AMA towards the end of this. I don't see any new. Oh wait, what's this? What's this? I want to thank Chad King and JJB for becoming patrons during the stream. That is amazing. This channel is growing, at least in terms of patrons, faster than it has in many years. In fact, we haven't been this high since 4 years ago when I got demonetized. We're still about $1,900 a month below our peak, but we'll get there. We'll get there again. I have stuck in there all these years. I just can't give up after, it's like I already succeeded. They just demonetized and shadow banned me. It's not. I think part of it is that makes me so mad, because I feel like all I've done is contribute positive stuff to the world, and so what were they punishing me for exactly? I know the answer, but it's not a legitimate answer. So at any rate, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me, and I will see you again tomorrow night. I'm going to do a music stream. Do I use tools much? What do you mean? Like hammers and shit? Yeah, no, I can't start another channel unless I can get another device. I don't know if there are VPNs that are good enough. AI tools. I don't have any extra money. If there are free ones that'll help me, I haven't been able to find anything free that will serve any meaningful purpose for me. But of course, I'm all about availing myself. Yeah, I use it for organizing my writing and stuff for sure. I mean, I use AI, but it'd probably be really good if I could have fully AI animated faceless videos and all that stuff. But to answer your question, as far as the trying to make a channel that just to make money, they know if I've tried to make other channels, and like the other day I got my streaming suspended because one of my channels on another account didn't qualify for it was on a different account, but they still knew it was me, and they gave me restrictions on this channel, not because I had done anything wrong on the other channel, but just because it didn't have enough channel history. So they said, well, because this has happened to another channel that we know you run, we're applying this to your channel on this other account. So no, I can't create another channel. They know that it's a blacklisted creator. My Instagram gets no views. My Facebook gets no views, no matter how many followers I have, no matter what I post. It can be a picture of an adorable baby holding a kitten, and oftentimes no one will see it. It's crazy. And then even on TikTok, I had 57,000 followers and 22 million views, and now I get 100 views all of a sudden on my TikToks. So they really buried the shit out of me, and no, there's nothing I can do about it except if I were to buy a new laptop, a VPN, and get a VPN, new laptop, and new phone, because they sent us the new rules of YouTube, and they're actually analyzing your typing speed, so they can recognize you at a different device. So if it's a certain person at a different laptop, they'll know it's you eventually. Just from your typing idiosyncrasies and speed and stuff. And then if there are devices that are close to your laptop a lot, then they know they'll flag those devices too. And they told us that our friends and family may also get shadow bans because they're around our devices and communicating with our channels a lot. Somebody suggested it's the reason I can't get anybody to collaborate too, that they see that I have 10,000 subscribers and only 200 views, and they know that I'm blacklisted and that they shouldn't associate with me. It's pretty wild, man. Yeah, I'm totally for real. I'm dead serious about all of this stuff. It's true. Rogan actually read it on his podcast. He read the thing about how, if you even communicate with somebody who is blacklisted online, they'll shadow ban you too. If it's like regular, They actually, my partner, she doesn't do anything on any of my accounts. And they they suspended her advertising on her Facebook. She doesn't share my posts. She doesn't post about me. She doesn't do anything. And they still suspended her advertising. Just because they probably anticipated that I was going to try to use it, which is what happened. I knew mine was suspended, so I tried to use hers. I've tried to use Google Ads to promote my YouTube, and it just will not accept the payment option, no matter what. I tried 4 different ones. So it's really difficult for me because, remember, I had already sort of isolated myself in South America when they took my income away, right? So they basically trapped me here years ago, and they just have not taken the thumb screw off all these years. No, Christos is not a sacred oil that does anything. That's just some stuff that somebody made up. There's no evidence for that. There's no oil that's ever been isolated. Show me a vial of it. Extract some with a syringe. That's not what Christos is. Christos, the word Christos is a spiritual fire, if you look it up in Greek. I mean, that whole thing about, you can have this fluid drip down. No one's ever seen this fluid. Somebody just said it. That's just people have subjective experiences and then they believe it. So they'll post it online as if it's real. And that doesn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean? That's not good magic. That's not, being an occultist. That's just making shit up. So, that's definitely not true. Sorry, Johnny. The Christos is just, Greek for the spiritual fire. It's got nothing to do with an oil that drips down from anywhere when you have some experience or whatever. It's not. Yeah, I'm going to start trying to stream on multiple channels at once and see if that helps. I mean, obviously, it seems like the content is meaningful for people. I don't think I've ever seen a channel this small with this few views have so many patrons. So, it's difficult to figure out what to do about it. I mean, I can't really get around it. I know that the channel is important to a lot of people, and there's a lot of people, that are motivated to. People have signed up for the Patreon at $50, $100, $150 tiers and stuff. So yeah, it bums me out because that means that if I actually wasn't shadow banned, I would be probably doing quite well. And so that's pretty annoying. At any rate, though, I'm getting kind of tired and I have work to do. So I'm going to pop off and then I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll probably do, a Truth About Everything stream earlier, and then I will do a music stream at night. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Please hit the like button. Do it now. Hit the fucking like button or else. Please do hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, especially support us on Patreon or one of the options in the chat. There's Zelle, PayPal. I really like Solana. Send me Solana. That'll make me happy. I told you guys to buy it. I told you when it was under $20 2 months ago. It hit 93, I think, today. So you guys got to take my calls, man. I'm not gonna tell you to buy a token that's not gonna fly. So remember that, and then also remember that commission once you 100x. Good night, guys.